back to we're getting up to all this, okay? So, Super Nintendo wins out because of games. Sega takes them to court, says you can't do that anymore because, well, let's face it.
It happened in the middle, though. That's why you saw Mortal Kombat on both systems.
Right. And then Sony hits, okay? Mm-hmm. Sony hits, and we have three-way competition. Super Nintendo, Super Nintendo.
For a bit with Super Nintendo. 95.
But then the
64 came a year later.
And the Sega Saturn, which I don't know what that was or what happened there.
That was a big mistake. They launched it early in America because it was $100 more than the PS1. But none of the very few retailers were informed ahead of time. And so a bunch of them just boycotted it. So you probably didn't see too many Sega Saturns being sold.
Well,
so it was popular in Japan, but that's pretty much it.
Well, after that, I mean, you've got Sony, who's, actually got a good market already behind them with other things, so they have money to put into this, and they know how to market their stuff already, so they pretty much have the better business.
But they're not used to the entertainment business. That's why they were teaming up with Nintendo with the CD thing. Because Sony didn't know anything about video games.
That's true. They did have computers already set up, though. I mean,
But that's not the same market.
True. But it's not too difficult for them to go from one to the other.
It is. I don't think... Because games are different than computers.
Oh, yeah.
You think so now because it's so similar.
Well,
it wasn't back then. Selling computers, fine. You have an OS, you have hardware. But for games, you need to license people. You need licensing to make sure people don't put pirate games out there on your system without you knowing. You got to form relationships with third parties. Because one of the things that we learned with Atari is that you can't just let anyone make games for your system, because they'll flood the market with cheap shit, and then people will just lose. People lose faith in your brand. You got to make sure
they'll take that cheap shit and bury it in a desert somewhere.
Yeah.
Only to be picked up or found later.
20 years later. No, not even 20. It's 30 years later.
I can't believe they actually did that.
It was, and the weird thing is, it's not like everyone heard it. It was like a rumor, and it's been a rumor all this time. Until someone finally decided, let's double check this. Yeah, it really did happen. So that's what you need to do. And Sony didn't have the relationship with third party that Nintendo did.
It's true. And I think that's what kept Nintendo more in the market than... But at the same time...
But one big thing that happened for Sony is that Nintendo opted to use cartridges. Because they went with CDs with the Philips. They're like, no, forget it, we're not going to do CDs. And then the Sega Saturn failed completely. So that left Sony the only major video game console out there that was using CDs. And CDs are way cheaper than cartridges.
That's true.
You're talking about the amount, it's pennies on the dollar compared to cartridges.
Yeah. So
the third parties went with Sony. Are like, hey, you know what? Even if we only sell half as many copies on PS1 as we would on N64, we're still going to make way more money.
Plus, then Nintendo also lost some of their big names to Sony.
What big name?
Final Fantasy.
Because of the CD thing.
Yeah.
That was, honestly, you look back, what wasn't the N64's biggest mistake? It's the cartridge.
Yeah. It really is. And you'll notice on the 64, there really aren't that many games. I mean, this is another thing that
it was also more expensive. We remember paying $60 for N64 cartridges, remember?
Yeah.
It was $10 more than what it was on PS1.
Yeah. And it was inappropriate. Didn't want to spend more. But I think
$10 and $1990 though. That's $500 today.
Okay, so when we're talking about it, if you look at it, there were just so many more games for the PlayStation than there were the 64. The 64 had a good turnout.
It had some really iconic games.
But that's mostly the games that Nintendo has.
Nintendo and Rare. I look back at the Beck 64 games. It was Nintendo, first party, Rare, second party.
Yeah.
And that's it. And man, it's very few good third parties.
But then as you're looking at it, it almost feels like it's the same thing they've done all the way up till now. Is that they've just kept their hands on like a few different series, like Mario Kart.
Oh, there's the Midna thing right over there.
Link.
You should show it for Jake.
Or Zelda, and like what? Maybe every once in a while, they'll release.
They'll do something new.
Metroid, but they do some new things, but like they've what's it called? They just hung on to that for such a long time.
It sells.
It sells. Like it. People do like it, and then they started innovating, I guess, with their systems, but it just feels like gimmicks. Feels like such a casual system so often.
It always was a casual system. It just didn't grow with the mature market.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Because you're looking at it, because you grew up with Nintendo and Super Nintendo, so when you're a kid growing up, these are great. But now that you're a 30-year-old adult, you're like, this feels so kiddie. But it's like, it's the same thing. It just hasn't,
Well, even if it's the same thing,
there's no like GTA Zelda.
Why haven't they tried to keep up with their market? I mean, like you have this market, this uber loyal market for such a long period of time, and then as they get older, you just ignore them. You're just like, you guys obviously don't care about this stuff anymore. You have no money to spend on it, and we don't need you.
It's all money and politics. That's the villain right there. That's
Go back
Midna.
Down to the
That's
villain.
Midna.
That's
the villain.
The villain's good.
See,
I do like the villain.
But it sticks out. This does not look like a Zelda character.
That's true. But
no.
Actually,
go back to 64 version. You have the one desert women.
Yeah, no, that's
but she's
true.
not from there though.
She looks like she could.
But she looked. But it made sense because they lived in the desert. And when you look at other desert fiction thing like Aladdin, that's what women wore because it's hot and you need something light and airy when you live in the desert. This chick does not. That outfit looks out of place no matter where you live.
Well, no, I don't know.
Well,
if she came from the Twilight Zone or something.
The Twilight Realm, the same
Twilight
place. So
Realm.
she's
Go
from the
back
same
to
place that
Midna.
Midna's from. Go back to Midna. Does Midna look anything like that chick though? See, I look at that and like I don't know if she's wearing the. I think that's her skin right there, and she has like a robe around her.
They could have done a much better job with her, I think.
Shut up, Jake.
Thanks.
You don't know what you're talking about. Midna's perfect.
What's the wizard? You can play the wizard thing that you just defeated?
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
Where is he from? I don't recall him being one of the bad guys.
That's Vati from Minish Cap, right?
Sounds about
Wizro. No, his name's where is he from?
Well, I mean, he definitely looks like a boss
big Poe or
from
I don't know.
Zelda, but anyways, I'm liking
I
this
don't know who
discussion.
that guy is.
Yeah, I don't know who Volga is either.
So maybe we need to play the good guys line so that we figure out who the bad guys are, so then we can play the bad guys and actually... Because I would like to figure out who these people are.
You can just look it up.
But what's the point of looking it up if we're supposed to get the story out of the game? I would like to actually get the story from the game
this
itself.
one's called Twilight Midna. I don't know why it's not Twilight Midna.
Twilly Midna?
Twilight.
Twilight?
I would assume Twilight because of Twilight.
Twilight Princess, that's
Of
Midna.
course, yes, but it says Twilly.
I know, maybe there's like a number, like a letter limit.
There's a letter limit on their names.
Hey, they used to be back in the time, remember?
Yeah, back in the day, not now.
Maybe they're like, let's keep it old school.